After 7 long years, 21 chilling murders, and 5 deeply unfortunate women who became the ill-fated obsessions of Joe Goldberg, Penn Badgley, Netflix's You reached its dark and poetic conclusion on April 24, delivering a finale that was as harrowing as it was inevitable. The 5th and final season kicked off by returning to its roots, New York City, where Joe, now donning a new identity and living a seemingly fairytale life, has his London wife Kate Lockwood, Charlotte Ritchie, by his side. Once just a quiet stalker and obsessive bookstore manager, Joe has now rebranded himself as America's Prince Charming, charming the public with his new persona. But as fans of the series know all too well, Joe's mask never stays on for long. True to his well-worn pattern of obsession, control, and violence masked as love, Joe's fairytale life begins to unravel with the arrival of a new fascination, Bronte, Madeline Brewer, a scrappy and passionate young literary enthusiast who stumbles into Joe's bookstore and life. What begins as a seemingly innocent bond between two book lovers quickly spirals into another tale of obsession, manipulation, and danger, as Joe, once again, betrays his partner, cheats on Kate, and begins testing Bronte's loyalty against the backdrop of his monstrous urges. As Bronte slowly uncovers the truth that her charming new partner is the same man who murdered her beloved teacher's assistant, Beck, and is capable of killing again, she makes a bold move. In a moment of courage and fury, Bronte lures Joe into an intimate setting, then holds him at gunpoint, forcing him to literally redact all of the twisted edits he had made to Beck's manuscript, an act of symbolic justice to restore her late friend's voice and legacy. In a rare flicker of vulnerability, Joe's humanity seems to break through when he receives a call from his son Henry, who, now old enough to understand the truth, calls him a monster, a moment that nearly breaks Joe. But as always, guilt quickly mutates into rage. Feeling betrayed by Bronte, Joe attacks her, and a chaotic struggle ensues. A gunshot rings out, it's Bronte who's been wounded. Joe chases her, attempts to drown her, but Bronte survives. As police sirens draw closer, the wounded but defiant Bronte corners Joe in the woods. He pleads with her to end his life, to save him from justice, but she refuses, choosing the harder, nobler path of allowing the system to bring him down. Joe charges at her again, she fires. Though the shot appears to miss, police arrive, and both are taken away in handcuffs. But it's Joe who ultimately faces the full weight of justice. In the end, Joe finds himself exactly where he has metaphorically been all along, caged, alone, and stripped of the charm and control he once wielded so easily. Convicted of the murders of Guinevere Beck and Love Quinn, as well as others that came to light during a brutal trial, Joe is sentenced to life behind bars. The trial was messy, the evidence horrific and the truth undeniable, Bronte narrates in a haunting voiceover, confirming that justice has finally caught up with Joe. In a twisted final note, Bronte reveals that her bullet did hit Joe in a particularly awkward and sensitive area, making him, as she wryly puts it, a walking D-joke. As Joe sulks in his cell, reading Norman Mailer's The Executioner's Song, he receives a fan letter from a woman named Belinda, expressing her desire to be his next victim. This prompts Joe to engage in a final chilling monologue, one that flips the mirror back on society itself. Maybe we have a problem as a society, he muses. Maybe we should fix what's broken in us. Maybe the problem isn't me. Maybe it's you. This deeply unsettling commentary reflects the real-world fascination with Joe Goldberg, a character who has been dangerously romanticized by fans despite his clear monstrosity, a phenomenon actor Penn Badgley himself has addressed on social media. The show doesn't shy away from confronting this, using its final minutes to comment on the audience's complicity in loving a killer. Before reaching this endpoint, the finale circles back to Joe's past sins and his continued refusal to accept accountability. When confronted by the ghost of Nadia Farron, Emily Hickman, Joe coldly distances himself, calling her demise sad but attributing it to a different version of himself. When speaking of Marianne Bellamy, Tati Gabrielle, he shockingly credits himself for her personal growth, suggesting that despite nearly killing her, he's somehow made her a better mother and person. Because of me, you put all that in the past. I made you better because I loved you, he tells her, completely unable to see that his brand of love is just another form of domination and cruelty. Even his near-death experience, when flames threaten to consume him before Bronte saves him, doesn't spark genuine change. A touching yet brief call from Henry hints at possible redemption as Joe tears up, conceding that maybe his son deserves better. But the glimmer of remorse is fleeting. When Bronte challenges his victim complex, reminding him he is not the wounded party but the predator, Joe's mask slips again. His moment of self-awareness vanishes, and the killer re-emerges. In the final moments, despite his isolation and conviction, Joe refuses to fully own his crimes, instead choosing to shift blame to his upbringing, to the people he claims to have loved, and to a society that he believes made him this way. Even behind bars, he is still the unreliable narrator of his own twisted story, justifying his actions, romanticizing his past, and still subtly manipulating the narrative. The ending of You does what many shows struggle to do: it closes the arc of its central character not with redemption, but with reckoning. Joe doesn't get a tragic, noble death, nor a redemptive arc. Instead, he gets what he has long deserved: to live out the rest of his days in a cage, tormented by his thoughts, forgotten by the world he tried to control, and forced to face the reality of what he is. There's a bitter irony in Joe receiving letters from admirers even in prison, a reflection of the same dangerous allure he's held over audiences. The show leaves us with a deeply uncomfortable but necessary question: why do we sympathize with monsters? Why did we root for Joe for so long? And what does that say about us? In blurring the lines between love and obsession, protection and control, passion and violence, You has always forced its viewers to examine their own boundaries. And in this final chapter, it doesn't just end Joe's story, it holds up a mirror to the audience, daring them to look closely. As Joe himself suggests in his final breath of delusion, maybe the problem isn't me. Maybe it's you. In the end, You is a cautionary tale not just about the dangers of obsession, but about the consequences of glamorizing toxicity, overlooking red flags, and the cultural tendency to conflate danger with desirability. Joe Goldberg was never a hero, and as the bars close in around him, the show ensures no one can pretend otherwise.